Okay, now another interesting and very famous succinct instruction of the Buddha is also related to this. It's related to sense restraint. It's related to not grasping at the signs and features. Now, if you look at this picture, you see, I always tell people, especially women, when you go shopping or when you want to buy something in a market or in a supermarket or in an open-air market like this or in a shopping mall, you just keep in mind the item that you want to get, and then you just defocus. When you defocus, what happens is things become blurred. That's why I teach you in panoramic awareness, try not to focus on an object, defocus so that things become unclear. When things become unclear, there are less chances of grasping at the signs and features. Correct? Because when things are clear, then you can see clearly, then you start to grasp at the signs and features. If it's just a blur image, just a color, no features of that form or shape, then it just comes and goes. So this is a very famous succinct instruction of the Buddha. The Buddha said, "In the seen, there shall be only the seen. In the heard, only the heard. In the sensed, only the sensed. In the cognized, only the cognized." That is how you should train yourself. This instruction actually was given only in 2 suttas in the whole of the Vitakka. The first one is the Malukyaputta Sutta. It is found in the Saṅgīta Nikaya, SN 35.78. Malukyaputta was an old monk. He had actually ordained late in life, and he had approached the Buddha and asked for instructions from the Buddha several times. It seems that he didn't get anywhere. So this time he approached the Buddha and asked the Buddha to again speak the Dhamma to him in brief. At first the Buddha protested. He said, "You are an old monk and you now ask me to preach the Dhamma in brief to you. What about the younger monks?" But anyway, he implored the Buddha to teach him the Dhamma in brief, and the Buddha taught him this. And when he heard this, he interpreted these instructions as the practice of sense restraint. Now here, there's only the eyes and the ears that are being mentioned, right? In what is seen, in what is heard. So the next one, in what is sensed, here is an abbreviation for the other senses, the other 3 senses: nose, tongue, and body. All right? And then the 6th sense, the mind, is covered by the next line, which is, in the cognized, there shall only be the cognized. So he interpreted this to mean sense restraint. So after he got these instructions from the Buddha, he went back and he practiced. And after some time, he became an arahant. There is another person to which the Buddha gave similar instructions. And this is Bāhiya. Now Bāhiya was not a bhikkhu, but he was someone who had renounced outside the Buddha Sasana. We are not sure whether he renounced on his own or whether he joined another sect, because it was not mentioned in the suttas, although the commentary tells us a very interesting story of how he was shipwrecked, and then he seems to be the only survivor from a ship, and then he landed up at the shores of a place called Supparaka, and he was naked, lost all his belongings, all his clothing, and then he became known as sort of an ascetic, and people regarded him as an arahant. That's what the commentary says. We don't know how the commentary got to know of this story. And he thought, because he had so much respect and so much support from the people around, he thought that he was an arahant. But there was a deva who, out of compassion for him, one day appeared and told him that you are not an arahant and you don't have the path, or you don't know the way to arahantship. Instead of being defensive, Bāhiya must have been very spiritually matured. He asked in a very honest and sincere way, if I am not an arahant, who is and who knows the path to arahantship? And so this deva told him that the Sammasambuddha had appeared in this world. He is truly an arahant. He knows the way to arahantship. Then you should go and see him. He's staying now in Jetavana in Savatthi. Okay, that was a story that the commentary tells us. In the sutta, there was nothing about his background. What is found in the sutta is that the Buddha was going on alms round in Savatthi at that time. And then this ascetic, he was wearing tree bark ascetic, came and implored the Buddha to teach him the Dhamma in brief. And the Buddha said, wait, Bāhiya, this is not the right time. I am still going on alms round. Wait until I finish. But then Bāhiya implored the Buddha 3 times. And on the 3rd time, the Buddha could not refuse anymore, and the Buddha gave him this instruction. So upon hearing this instruction, Bāhiya became an arahant right there. And soon after that, he left the Buddha and he was gored to death by a cow. So that's the story in the sutta. So you see, the same instructions given to 2 different persons had different results, in the sense that the first person, Malukyaputta, interpreted it as just sense restraint, whereas Bāhiya went further than that and he attained arahantship. So this is something very odd to many people who are knowledgeable to some extent. Knowledgeable Buddhist meditators would have been taught by contemporary meditation teachers that in order to become enlightened, you must observe everything in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, or the Four Noble Truths. See things according to cause and effect. Then only can one become an arahant. But in this short instructions given by the Buddha never mentioned anything about anicca, dukkha, anatta, about the paticca samuppada, the law of dependent origination. He didn't even mention the Four Noble Truths. He just said that if you are able to do this, then you will neither be here, nor there, nor in between, and that is the end of suffering. Yeah, you don't see any elements of these very basic teachings that we are all so familiar with. Nothing about the 3 characteristics, nothing about dependent origination, nothing about the Four Noble Truths. And yet he got enlightened. Seems like a fluke shot, right? Well, we actually don't know. Enlightenment or awakening works in very strange and mysterious ways. We try to generalize things according to our limited understanding. So don't be too judgmental on how people become awakened. And nowadays, there are people who are not Buddhists who claim that they are awakened. They had some awakening experiences which changed their life completely. From one who is contemplating suicide, suffering from severe depression and low self-esteem, to become a world-famous spiritual teacher. They have had some interesting experience that's awakening, in the sense that it's able to permanently resolve their issues and to be at peace with oneself and with the world. However, the commentary tells us this interesting story. Again, I don't know how this commentary got to know of this story, but it was a very long-drawn story. If you want to know more details about it, then you can go to YouTube and you can Google one of my talks that was given in Singapore. It's called Dhamma in Brief, where I gave a very detailed explanation of the story behind Bāhiya. In short, what happened was that during Kassapa Buddha's time, Kassapa Buddha was the Buddha before our Gautama Buddha. Bāhiya was a Buddhist monk. He was a disciple of Kassapa Buddha. But at that time, Kassapa Buddha had passed away. He had attained parinibbana. And it was towards the ending of the sasana when things were becoming very decadent, much worse than what is happening now. So a group of monks who were very sincere in their practice decided that they will not be able to make any spiritual progress by continuing to stay with the community of monks, the Sangha, who are so depraved, so decadent, no morality. So they make a pact that they want to climb up a very stiff hill or mountain using a ladder, and then after that they just throw the ladder away, so there's no way of coming down, and they will do or die, literally. So when they got to the top of the plateau, and then they threw away the ladder, all 7 of them strived for attainment, for awakening. But the next day, the senior-most monk became an arahant, and then the second one became an anagami. And they offered to use their psychic powers and feed the rest. But the rest of them, the 5 of them, were very, very proud. They said, that's not part of our deal. You have done your job, you go your way, and we'll do ours. So the 2 of them went away, left them to their own fate. The remaining 5 didn't make it. They literally died while trying to strive for enlightenment. And it seems that because of their good karma, they were reborn in the Deva realms for many, many lifetimes. Meanwhile, this anagami, who had by the time of our Buddha, gone up to Brahma realm in the pure abodes of anagamis, it seems that this anagami, who was a Deva then, he was a Brahma, he would every now and then check on his comrades, on his friends, to see how they were doing. And so one day he found out that this Bāhiya was being an imposter, claiming that he was an arahant when he wasn't. So this Deva, out of compassion for him, appeared before him and told him that the Buddha was around and he should go and see the Buddha. So that's the story in brief. So the possible explanation for why Bāhiya could become an arahant with such succinct instructions is that he had done his homework in the past life. Yeah, he literally strived and he died. It's not do or die. He did and he died. So he had done his homework before, and that's why now with just this little hint, it's like a trigger, like a catalyst. You know, all his past accumulated wisdom and spiritual faculties ripened, and he became an arahant. You may also notice that there are some people here who may not have done any Buddhist practice before in this current life, and then they become a yogi at a late age, maybe 50s, and then they can make progress within a very short time compared to a monk or a nun who has been trying so hard for 20-30 years and they're still not getting anywhere. But this housewife who just comes in and attends a retreat for a week or so is able to attain the jhanas and go very deep in the meditation. So don't compare. Yeah? Each of us has our own background, and so we have to walk at our own pace. Okay, so here you see, this is also open awareness. The Buddha is not asking you to just focus on one thing. Whatever you observe, whatever you experience through the senses, don't go beyond what you experience. Yeah? You see, there shall only be the seen, there shall only be the heard, be only the sense, be only the cognized. It means you don't go beyond that by grasping at the signs and features and proliferating on them. So this is another indication that open awareness is indeed found in the suttas, and it actually can be at a very low level of just sense restraint, step number 2 in the graduate training, and its high-end level is attainment of arahantship. Okay, now earlier on I talked about the 561 features, which I spoke about in our retreats. So I'm going to show you one particular instance in one gāthā that is also very famous, in which you can see how this works. Now, this is called the Bhaddekaratta gāthā. It is a verses, and it can be found in several places. In fact, you can see here, it can be found in the Bhaddekaratta Sutta, MN 131 to 134. Here it is translated as a single excellent night. Right? Baddha means excellent, Eka means one, and Ratta means night. So there are 4 suttas in which this same gāthā is found. I'm going to recite this for you in Pali and English, and I will explain as we go along. Atitam na nuagameya napatikangke anagatam yadatitam pahinang tam appantancha anagatam. He would not wait on what is past, nor expect what's in the future, for the past has been left behind, and the future not yet arrived. Paccuppanna yang dhammam tatta vipassati asaṅghirang asaṅkuppang tam vidvamanubruhaye. But wherever phenomenon just arisen he clearly sees, unshakably, invincibly, that the wise would keep fostering. Now, if you look at how the first verse goes, you will see that this person, he will not wait on what is past, means attend to. He will not attend to what is the past, he will not proliferate on the past, he will not think about the past, nor expect what's in the future. This is quite obvious. Why? Why would he not do all these things? Then you can see that in the second verse, which says, because he's so busy looking at phenomena that have just arisen in the present moment. Now, if you look at the first line of the second verse, you see Paccuppanna, right? Paccuppanna yang dhammam. Now, this Paccuppanna is usually translated as present, but actually it is composed of 2 Pali words, prefix pati and uppanna. Uppanna means have arisen, and pati is an intensifier which shows that it has just arisen. It's not arisen long time ago, but just arisen, what I call the immediate past. So because he's so busy being aware of things in the so-called present, the immediate past, then he doesn't have time to think about the past or the future. The reason why I picked this photograph as a backdrop is because when you are mountain climbing, when you are climbing a cliff like that, you cannot afford to think of the past or the future. Your life is at stake. Just a slip of mindfulness, you think of something and you grasp the wrong crevice, you put your foot at the wrong place, at the loose rock, and finish. Either you will be grievously hurt or that's the end of your life. Yeah, that's why a lot of rock climbers who say they love this spot because you're right here in the present. You got no future, no past. Of course. That's why I keep on telling you all. You know, the 5 senses can only take present objects. If you try to stay with the 5 senses, you can't be thinking of the past or the future. You are as near to the present as you can. And all of those of you who have participated in my mindful hiking retreats can attest to this, can testify to this. If you go on a sit-walk retreat, a normal sit-walk retreat, the first day or so, you have a lot of problems with drowsiness or restlessness. Yeah, but when you start on a mindful hiking retreat, the first day we go on a hike, your mind is already peaceful. You got no chance to be drowsy. Because you have to be careful, be mindful of where you're going. So if you look at this woman, she's the same thing, you know. What happens if she falls down? Yeah, finish. That's the end of her life. Unless there's something else below there, which is a safety net or something. Otherwise, you're gone. If you are in the so-called present, being aware of the five senses, you will not think of the past or the future. And this is the concluding verse. Aceva kitchamatapang kojanya maranam suve nahino sankarang tena mahasenena machuna. Today the task is exertion. Who knows death may be the next day? For there's no bargain for us with him, Lord of death with a great army. Evam biharing ataping ahorattamatanditam tambe Bhaddekarattoti santo acikkate muni. One who thus dwells so ardently, day and night without laziness, he indeed is one with the great night, and so declares the peaceful sage. So this is a very meaningful photograph, because you can't afford to be lazy, you can't afford not to be mindful. Climbing a stiff cliff like that, you have to be right here in the present moment. Although these people are not practicing vipassana, they don't see things according to anicca, dukkha, anatta, they don't see things according to cause, condition and effect, but they are in the present. They have composure of mind. Yeah, but it's only when you practice vipassana, then wisdom will arise. Then only will you be able to go beyond the Lord of Death. So that's why it's so important to practice. Don't wait until you have the time to go for a long retreat in a monastery or in a retreat center. I'm not saying that you should not go for a retreat. If you have the time, go. That's good. But meanwhile, don't just wait. Do it right now. Practice open awareness in your daily life as often as you can. Make use of all different sort of means within your knowledge to remind yourself to come back to the present moment as often as you can in as many aspects of your life as possible. Right? So this Bhaddekaratta gāthā shows us that this 5-6-1 principle indeed does work. I also talked about the 3 stages of composure in the practice of open awareness. And someone asked me during my Hokkien retreat whether this can be found in the suttas. And I said, no, this is an Aggacitta Sutta. But at that time, I forgot that actually there is a reference, or there are references for this. And today I'm going to show you these references. So first of all, let's talk about the 3 stages of composure attainable through open awareness that I have been telling you. The first stage is when you're trying to keep your attention on the 5 senses, but the mind is still very restless. Thoughts still come and go, but you are not disturbed by them. You are not ruffled by them. You can still come back to the 5 senses. However, because the mind is so restless, there are so many thoughts coming and going, you can't really acknowledge them. You just know that there's a whole bunch of thoughts coming and going. But you don't try to push them away, you don't follow them. You still coming back to your five senses. Okay? So this is the first stage. During this stage, you are able to see the three characteristics. Get a glimpse of the three characteristics very clearly, but you cannot see cause, condition, and effect, because at this point you cannot acknowledge them, you cannot really identify one thought and the other. Too fast. So you can't see cause and condition, but you can definitely see the three characteristics. I think the only obstacle that prevents people from seeing these three characteristics is because they try to push away. They are dissatisfied with themselves for having restless thoughts when they are trying to be peaceful and calm. Or they are carried away by these thoughts. So these are the two main things that obstruct people from seeing the three characteristics in this first stage. But actually it's very clear, isn't it? Restlessness is a very, very clear indication of impermanence. All the thoughts, memories, feelings, they are changing all the time. Impermanent. It's suffering. It's real suffering because you don't want them and yet they come. It's unstoppable. And it's anatta. There's no one in control. You would very, very much like to suppress them and just focus on your five senses. But it just won't listen to you. Okay, so it's very obvious here. The second stage is when thoughts are spaced further and further apart. They don't come in a big bunch like that, like in the first stage. And you have more skill in staying with the five senses. Alright? So what happens then is that because the thoughts are spaced far apart, it means to say that your composure has deepened and you have a chance to understand or see cause, condition, and effect. Because they are spaced apart, then you can see what is the reason or what is the cause and condition for this arising of this thought or this memory or this feeling. You can see very clearly. Alright, but then you have to incline your mind. If you don't incline your mind, you won't see. You just get very complacent with the calmness and tranquility of being with the five senses. Step number 3, or the third stage of composure, when there are no more thoughts at all. You are just mindful of the six senses, not just the five senses, including the mind. Okay, that's a time when you should try to observe the five aggregates in the ultimate sense, and the three characteristics and cause, condition, and effect. Okay, this is for higher level of composure. 1 and 2 can be achieved in your daily life activities. But 3, you have to do in a formal sitting posture. Yeah, because we are talking about thoughts, even intentions of wanting to do this, wanting to turn, wanting to do things, these are also thoughts in the mind. And if you are busy doing some daily activities, you can't help but have all these intentions going on. So for number 3, you probably need to be in a more static position, like a seated posture or in a lying, reclining posture. Okay, so these are the 3 stages of composure that can be attained through open awareness. And you can see how I tie this to the 3 types of composure that are mentioned in the suttas. The first one can be found in the Digha Nikaya, in the Saṅgīti Sutta, DN 33. Saṅgīti here actually means singing, choral singing, like you all chant the Dhamma rhymes. So at that time, one very leading contemporary spiritual teacher had just died, and his disciples were fighting with one another, arguing with one another, saying that this is the true Dhamma, saying you are speaking the wrong Dhamma, I am practicing correctly, you are practicing wrongly. So there was a lot of debate, controversy, and argument going about during that time. And so at that time, Asma Sariputta decided that in order for this not to happen in future when our Buddha passes away, we should all sit down together and recite the Buddha's teachings in unison. This is like what you all do when you recite the Dhamma rhymes. At that time, there was no MP4, no MP3. Everything had to be memorized. So they memorized everything and then they chanted together. You see, Saṅgīti is actually chanting, but is chanting in a melodious way. So in this Saṅgīti Sutta, you will see here, it talks about the 3 types of concentration, samadhi. One is with thinking and pondering. The other is with pondering without thinking. And the last one is with neither pondering or thinking. Now the Pali words are Vitakka and vicāra. If you are familiar with Pali, Vitakka and vicāra. Vitakka is usually translated as initial thinking, initial thoughts, and Vitakka is translated as discursive thoughts. Sometimes it can be translated as initial application for Vitakka and sustained application for vicāra. The latter translation is used especially for the state of jhana, for the first and the second jhana. We're talking about Vitakka and vicāra. I will explain this later. I'll show you the other references first. The next one is in the Connected Discourses of the Buddha. In the Connected Discourses on the Unconditioned. Okay, here again he says that this is the path that leads to the unconditioned. There's concentration with thought and examination, concentration without thought but with examination only, concentration without thought and examination. Right, so different people translate the word Vitakka and vicāra differently. On the left, the Digha Nikaya was translated by Maurice Walsh. And this Saṅgīta Nikaya, the Connected Discourses of the Buddha, was translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Then we have another one that is found in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Eights. This is called Saṅkhitta Sutta. In English, it's translated as in brief. Here also, there is a reference to different types of samadhi. This is in relation to the Brahma Viharas and to the Satipatthanas. The Brahma Viharas are the 4 divine abidings of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And then the 4 Satipatthanas are the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So in this sutta, the Buddha encourages the monks to practice the 4 Brahma Viharas and the 4 Satipatthanas, and to do so initially with just normal concentration, and then it goes on to the concentration with thought and examination, and then another concentration without thought but with examination only, and then another one without thought and examination, another one with rapture, another one without rapture, another one accompanied by comfort, and another accompanied by equanimity. So they are all different types of composure, different types of samadhi referred to by the Buddha. He did not use the normal jhana formula for this one. So it is very obvious among yogis that sometimes you can reach a thought-free stage. The mind is composed, is thought-free, but then the other factors of the second jhana are not there. You don't feel rapture, the sort of rapture that is often described like goose pimples or floating or a lot of joy, thrills. But that mind is thought-free and you're just watching things arising and passing away. So this is this third type of samadhi, no thought, but need not necessarily have to have the other jhana factors. Okay, so how do I tie this with what I talked about just now, the 3 stages? First stage, I said that the mind is still very restless, but you can still stay with the 5 senses and not be bothered by the restlessness. Right? This is the first one, because there's still thought and examination, or there's still vitakka and vicāra. You can interpret vitakka and vicāra in two ways, from an objective point of view or from a subjective point of view. From an objective point of view, all this restlessness that are going on, that is vitakka vicāra. Alright? But from the subjective point of view, your mind is composed because you are having initial application and sustained application in trying to be aware of the five senses. You have to put effort to be aware of what's happening in the senses. Okay, it's called initial application, application of the mind, and sustained application of the mind to keep your attention on the five senses. In the second stage, where the thoughts are spaced far apart, okay, you could say that here there's only examination, but no initial thought, but just discursive thoughts. Because the initial thoughts are like all those things that happen when one is restless, a lot of things that come and go very quickly. But this one is more prolonged, it's a longer thought, but it is spaced apart. Sometimes it could just be a short thought. From the subjective point of view, it means that now you don't have to apply so much initial effort. The mind is more or less now skilled in keeping with the five senses, so it's like an elastic band. Like if the mind is tied to an elastic band, if it is pulled by the thought, it will immediately come back. So there is not so much initial application anymore. There's still the sustained application on keeping with the five senses. But you are not yet fully on auto cruise, not yet. So you get to auto cruise in the third stage when there's no more vitakka and vicāra. There are no more thoughts from the objective point of view as well as from the subjective point of view. No more initial or sustained application. You are just on auto cruise, and the mind automatically keeps being aware of whatever is happening in the six senses. Now, I want to end this talk by rounding it up with my updated simile of mindfulness, composure, saññā, or perception, and sampajañña. We talk about the three major components of effective practice. So, what is sati? Sati, or mindfulness, is like an accounts clerk. An accounts clerk is busy trying to key in, mindfully keying in all the data from the ledger into the computer, into the software, in the accounting software, in the bookkeeping software. So there has to be mindfulness in the sense that there's deliberate effort needed to key in the information. So mindfulness is something deliberate that you have to have effort or cetana or volition involved. Now, in order to go further, then I want to introduce another thing. You need to know a bit about your computer. I'm going to show this video to give you an understanding of how your computer works, because my simile is related to modern digital technology.
What does it mean to defrag your hard drive? Now, defragmentation reduces the amount of fragmented files on your hard drive. It reorganizes related data files and puts them in the same physical location on your hard drive. So, for example, as you installed a program on this empty hard drive, and as it installs, notice how the files for that program are in close proximity to each other and are not scattered in different locations. They are close together. Now let's install another program, and let's install one more program. Now, as you can see, the data files of each of these programs were installed on the hard drive in close proximity to each other, which means that when you want to run one of these programs, the computer will run quicker because a hard drive doesn't have to do extra work by fetching data from different areas of the hard drive. Now, over time, as data is added and deleted, the free space on the hard drive will get smaller and will tend to spread out in different locations on the hard drive, instead of being in one general location. So as you can see, the free space on this hard drive is spread out into different chunks. So if another program is installed, The computer may not be able to find enough free space in one location on the hard drive to accommodate the program, because the free space is scattered in different locations. So for example, if we install another program on this hard drive, and if the computer can't find enough free space in one area for this program, the computer will scatter the program's data files in smaller chunks all over the hard drive. So it may put 50 megs here, 30 megs over there, and 20 megs in another spot. And when you have related files that are scattered into different locations on the hard drive, then this is known as fragmentation. And when you have a fragmented hard drive, the computer will run slow because the computer has to work harder to read and write data because the data is scattered all over the hard drive. And when this happens, you need to do a defragmentation. Doing a defragmentation gathers all of the related files that are scattered on the hard drive and puts them together so that they are in the same physical location on the hard drive. And it also does its best to put the free space together in one big chunk. And after the defrag is complete, the computer will run faster and more efficient. So as you can see from this before and after graphic, all the related data files are together and all the free space is put together. Now you only have to do a defrag on mechanical hard drives, because mechanical hard drives have disks that spin so that the heads can read and write data files. Now solid-state drives or SSDs do not require doing a defrag, because SSDs have no moving parts. The computer can just pick and choose whatever file it needs, regardless of which memory chip the file is located on.
Okay, so I hope now you have a better idea of how your computer works. My simile is comparing your hard disk to composure. When your hard disk is fragmented, it means that you have so many distractions going on in your mind that you are not able to process those information effectively. So saññā here is the data that is stored in the hard drive. Mindfulness is the accounts clerk who keys in all the data, and the data gets stored in the hard disk. But then with time, as more and more data are keyed in, then the hard disk will become fragmented. And so that's why you need to defragment it. To defragment the hard disk means to arrange everything together so that they are more systematically arranged and the hard disk can work more efficiently. So it's the same thing. That's why you need composure. You need the mind to be composed, and composure is like a defragmented hard disk. Your mind becomes clear now, and then when you incline your mind to produce an answer to an issue, or even when you incline your mind to verify the three characteristics of existence and cause and conditionality, then it will be able to do so in a more efficient way. Alright, so that's how I want to emphasize the importance of composure. Without composure, it is not easy for sampajañña to work, to give you any answers, whether for spiritual purposes or for your worldly issues. Okay, so I shall end the talk here, and I go on to questions and answers on the practice of open awareness. Okay, so anyone has any question?